Hello, I'm Vikas Khanna. I'm a chef in New York. Welcome to Purnima Restaurant. Here at Purnima, we are interested in making Indian dishes more approachable and accessible to an average person who is unfamiliar with the cuisine. One of my favorite examples of this is our rhubarb chutney, which has the unique sweet and sour flavor so perfect. With chutney, and instead of using sugar, we used a sweet Italian dessert wine and reduced it. Then elements were added like star anise and ground black pepper and tandoori paste, which is quintessentially Indian. It's something as a Westerner one might say, I know rhubarb, I love rhubarb, but this tastes distinctly Indian. But here at Purnima, I try to get more cuisines, regional cuisines of India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. But again, the challenge remains to make it more palatable for the regular audience. The market cannot be imposed by our decision of what is the greatest dish in our countries. Understanding the palate of people in New York City and such a strong influx of tourists who are traveling from Europe, from different parts of America, from Canada, South America, so many Asians who come here. So we want to make sure that any dishes we are serving is not too foreign and they actually enjoy the meal. By doing such a strong research in the market, and you're in the market, you understand what works, what doesn't work. Let me start getting this dish as a special. So let me get people's feedback. So before I introduce any major dish, I have a fish dish here called fish munia, which is a great dish. It's made in a saffron and cashew based sauce. So it was on the special list for a month till we started getting a good response to the dish and we started putting it in the menu. So we are actually moving forward, understanding what the market wants to. I use a lot of different meats. I use a lot of different seafood, which is not extremely quintessential to Indian cuisine. I have these dishes made out of squids, and I have the coconut curry squid with infused with turmeric. But see, that is not the basic cuisine which initially when I came here I would cook. The whole thing changed because, oh my God, this is so interesting. Can I accept that in my cuisine? Sure, I can accept it. And how can I go to a farmer's market as we did, and how can I not pick up asparagus, which was fresh and so soft and tender? And how can I not bring it to my kitchen and use one of my techniques to cook asparagus? I agree it's not very Indian, and you don't see that in India, in Indian restaurants. But how can you resist, my question is, without using the spring blossoms of rhubarb and using all those things? How can I resist? I'm a chef. I have to love all those ingredients which constitute a cuisine. I love when things come in season. I love to pick them up because because they have the natural juices, they have the natural sugars in them. I love to use that all the time. The lamb chops have always been on any menu, everywhere I go. And it took me years to figure out, obviously, the way we do the cooking in Indian restaurant with the tandoor, we don't have the system of understanding medium rare, and we don't use thermometers and everything. So it took me years to practice that what is medium rare, what is medium, cooking in the tandoor, and what temperature has to be, controlled. What should be the distance of the fire source to the skewer where the meat is. I have these long skewers in which we actually skewer the meats and we just dip it inside the whole pit. Yogurt, actually coming from a very technical point of view, is that yogurt works as a tenderizer. It actually softens up the meat. It breaks down the tissues and softens the meat. And yogurt does add a very fragrant acidity to food, which I really enjoy. And once you have a meat which has been marinated in a marinade, and you have something which is actually breaking down the tissues, it helps to infuse the meats with the flavors. And here we have ginger, which is chopped so finely, such minute particles of ginger, which I actually wanted to penetrate into the lamb chops. So we don't grate it, we chop them very finely. So this dish has been on our menu for maybe 7 years, 6 years. It's always there. It's served with blueberry chutney, which is not very Indian, but it's a very interesting mix of cinnamon, cardamom, and blueberries. You can take one ingredient and weave a whole story around it as a tasting menu. The next tasting menu comes out for the restaurant will be on mangoes, in which I have mangoes in every courses. Mango salad, then you have jalapeno stuffed with mangoes. Everything is just mangoes, wrapped in mango sheets. Once I get my shipment, right now it's expensive, once I get my shipment, then you'll see I'll be just indulged into this whole thing. How I extract sugars from mangoes, everything you can possibly think. Mango soups, mango infused lamb chops, and chicken cooked with mangoes, everything. The guy in Jackson Heights, they're going to provide a shipment for me, which is like 20 cases. So what I do is I break them down of what I need. If I'm making ice creams of them, I'll do the ice creams. Because when they come to me, I want to make sure that they're the proper stage of ripeness and everything. So I do my stuff and then we stored it. Because it's difficult, because it's a very limited window. It's just maybe like 2.5, 3 weeks from now. We have more than like 2,000 varieties of mangoes in India. But the mangoes which actually reach America are more well known. Alfonso is one of the most expensive qualities of mangoes. It's only eaten by the rich elite in India. But Alfonso also has a very small shelf life. So you need to, because it's very high in fructose, so you have to consume it faster. But having these mangoes, it's just a matter of taste. Once you taste this real stuff, it's very difficult to go back. The real stuff of where the mangoes, you actually feel somebody's injected sugar and flavors into them, and literally like, oh my God, I was deprived of this taste literally all my life. It's like nectar, literally like nectar. Ayurveda, interesting, very, very interesting. Ayurveda is actually the foundation of Indian cuisine. All these ingredients, what you see in Indian food, was not just by default. They had them in the farms and they added them to the food. They were very much part of medicines. Few spices and everything, they're all used for healing. And understanding that a lot of India was vegetarian, I'm sure the incorporation of spices into food was all based on the fundamentals of Ayurveda, where the body needs heat for metabolism to perform. And if you're not having meats, the vegetables don't have enough heat. So I'm sure these spices were added with a major thought process as incorporation into a cuisine which was primarily vegetarian. So these little spices which we have today, and we can call them flavoring agents, they all have their roots back into Ayurveda. There's so many different spices today. When you read about medicines and holistic approach to medicines, they use so many spices as a part of a body healing system. And suddenly you feel that, oh my God, they are actually a science which has come to a level of cooking now. Sugar is a Sanskrit word. It comes from the word shakar. On the banks of Ganges, jaggery was the first raw sugar which was produced by boiling dates. But I love the warmth of that sugar. I use it in one of my desserts. I do an apple cobbler here in the restaurant, in which I use jaggery, because I think that the caramelization process and the unrefined sugars in them, they have more intensive flavors than just using regular brown sugar or white sugar. It's such a nice fruity flavor, smoky too, but it has a good flavor. And then when you're having that, you feel, oh my God, this didn't go through the whole chemical processing of decolorizations and everything. And here you see something which is totally natural. As you learn more about sugar, that every temperature sugar changes its form, and the whole textures and everything, and this use too. Jaggery is very similar. It's very similar. You have to be careful while cooking with jaggery. Sometimes it burns too fast. Cuisine is also something which is alive like people. As we become the first generation immigrants, our cuisine becomes the first generation immigrant just like us. So for the cuisine to survive just like us, we have to make a lot of amendments. We have to make sure that we are dealing with the palates of the people we are serving. But I go to Indian restaurants, and there's such fantastic Indian restaurants in New York and around the West Coast and Chicago, and makes me so happy when I see these kids doing so well. And I feel, God, see, it's eventually happening. The first instinct was survival, and now the instinct is growth. That now they're growing and they're evolving in such a high speed. I'm sure a few years ago, people were not ready to pay such a high price for Indian cuisine. But today people are. People feel the value. People understand that how much is going on with this cuisine and how it's evolving. People are paying a price for that. A food really defines a culture in so many ways. I was really into, so much of my project work was going in Egypt. So my first thing was actually go to an Egyptian restaurant. And when you go to a restaurant which is ethnic and you don't know much about the culture and cuisine, But just going to the restaurant is a very good introduction to the culture. Because food and music are two things which every human beings react to it in a very similar way. It's always something about the memory, something about life, something about giving, something about sharing. And I think that's a good thing about any culture when you're trying to embrace a culture. It's a good introduction through food. I think the greatest breakthrough was at the Rubin Museum of Art, where people who are coming and visiting the museum, they're already indulged into the Himalayan art and culture. Yeah. But here we said, while they're here, let's give them a full taste of the whole culture. Let's add the whole cuisine from these places. But understanding that most of the clientele for the museum were seniors and kids from the schools, and that was really important part of the clientele, is that we had to redefine the food. If we were doing paninis, we have chicken curry, Nepalese chicken curry paninis. So you're giving them the whole taste, but you're actually repackaging it for making them feel more comfortable enjoying it. You're getting rice from Nepal. It's a red rice, like the most gorgeous color rice, which I'm using at the museum, which is also an interesting take on food. When you're getting the people there, they're already understanding Nepal, they're already understanding all these legends of Nepal, the stories from the cultures, but here when they come down to the cafe, they're actually consuming a part of it, which becomes a part of their bloodstream. So I take food as a much deeper level, because it doesn't just nurture you as a hunger, but actually that food which you take inside with those feelings, it constitutes a part of your thinking process. It's actually providing fuel to your brain and to your thinking process. The cafe has really helped me in a lot of ways to open up this whole new countries and bring them to the mainstream. This country was discovered because of these little spices. It was just one wrong turn of the ship and Columbus came here. He was still searching for India.